Hey guys, it's Max. In this video, I'm taking a look at the Samsung NX1's 120fps slow motion function and comparing it to its biggest competitor, the GH4's 96fps. Along with 120 FPS, the NX1 can also do 60 FPS, which will record audio unlike the 120. Now let's take a look at some footage comparing the 120 FPS to the 60 as well as the standard 30 FPS modes. Now let's take a look at how the NX1 slow motion compares to the GH4's. Big issue with shooting slow motion is your ISO performance. Because you have to set your shutter speed higher, that in turn forces you to raise your ISO, and that introduces more noise to the image. Let's take a look at a quick low light comparison test between the GH4 and the NX1. Another issue is moiré and aliasing, which is typically increased when you're shooting in these slow motion modes. Let's take a look at a comparison test using a t-shirt that I could never wear when I was shooting with Canon cameras making YouTube videos because of the horrible moiré that they have. By now you may have noticed that some of the GH4 footage has some flickering issues. Now this happens when a camera's shutter speed doesn't match up to the frequency of the lights you're using, and this happened quite a bit with the GH4's 96 FPS, and with the NX1's 120 FPS I never encountered this. The GH4 actually has a special setting where you can customize your shutter speed to match up with the lights you're using to fix this issue. I did take some time and I got it almost perfect, but there was still a little bit of flickering in my image. One problem with doing this is while you can fix the flickering, your shutter speed might not match up to the proper setting you need, which could result in some choppy footage or too much motion blur. Another thing I want to mention is the NX1's video autofocus. Even in the 120 FPS mode, you have full autofocus that works quite well. It's really impressive. With the GH4, as soon as you hit your variable frame rate option to get your 96 FPS, you're stuck in full manual, meaning you can't even use your little touchscreen to set your initial focus up before you hit the record button. You're just completely stuck in manual. Now, while this isn't a huge issue, it's just another point to give to the NX1 over the GH4. One thing I noticed with the NX1's footage is that it has more compression artifacts. If you look at my first shot where there's a lot in focus and lots of movement at the same time, there's a lot of compression artifacts. Looking at the second shot, it looks dramatically improved with much more details and less compression issues. This is likely because of the new H.265 compression codec. Now this new codec is supposed to give you the same amount of details in half the size of the H.264 codec. Now I did some more research and I actually figured out that the NX1's footage was about a quarter the size of the GH4's footage. So you have about 1.1 megabytes per second for the NX1's footage and about 3.8 for the GH4's footage. Now you also have to take into account that the NX1 has 24 more frames per second than the GH4 does. So if you count that in, the NX1's footage is about 1/5 of the size per frame of the GH4. Now that is a stupidly low rate. I really wish Samsung would give us a higher bitrate option. This would really help this compression artifacts that you guys are seeing. Now, if somebody's gonna spend $1,500 on this camera, they're going to be able to afford a couple more cards. I really just doesn't make sense to me why Samsung would do something like this. The cards I use are about 30 bucks for a 64 gigabyte and it writes at 60 megabytes per second, where the NX1 records at 1.1 megabytes per second for the slow motion footage. Now with this in mind, take another look at the NX1 slow motion footage compared to the GH4. It's really impressive, right? To keep the compression artifacts down, I would suggest to shoot with a shallow depth of field, which shouldn't be an issue with the NX1's APS-C size sensor, and that will greatly reduce those compression artifacts. If you're a Vimeo Plus or Pro member, you guys can follow the link that I have in the description and download the original file of this test before its YouTube compression, which will get you a more realistic comparison test between the two cameras and a better look at the NX1 slow motion footage. Now, after you guys check that out, let me know in the description below what you guys think of the NX1 slow motion and how it compares to the GH4s. In my opinion, overall, the NX1 is a much better slow motion camera than the GH4. When I first got my GH4s, I shot a couple slow motion clips which you guys can still check out on my YouTube channel, and after that I stopped using the 96 FPS mode completely. Now that is because of the amount of detail that you lose when you're shooting 96 FPS over shooting 60 FPS. And for me, it just wasn't worth that extra slow motion because of how much detail you lose there. The image basically looks like you're out of focus, which is really bad. When I first shot some slow motion with the NX1 and checked it on the computer, I was really impressed. Not only do you have a lot more detail, you also have a much slower image, and you have the autofocus, which is really nice. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. And if you haven't yet subscribed, definitely hit that subscribe button. You guys don't want to miss my full NX1 review along with the GH4 comparison. And if you haven't seen my other videos yet, I have other videos on the NX1 and other filmmaking gear, reviews, stuff like that as well. So definitely go check those out. And if you guys are going to buy an NX1, I have some links in the description, a link to Amazon, Adorama, and B&H, whichever is your preference. If you guys buy through those links, it doesn't cost you any extra and it supports what I do here. I don't get sent any cameras in for review. Everything I review I have to purchase myself, so it definitely helps out. So don't forget to let me know what you guys thought of this video in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.